My name is Alex. I'm a pilot, 48 years old. And on June 14th, 2 years ago, I died from a sudden cardiac arrest right in my own living room. For 22 minutes, my heart did not beat. For 22 minutes, I was clinically dead. What I saw in that time changed everything I thought I knew about life, about death, and about the world we live in. Jesus showed me what will happen in the moments just before he returns. And his warning, it should terrify all of us. Before that day, my life was defined by one thing: control. As a commercial airline captain, control was my profession. I was responsible for hundreds of souls, for a 200-ton machine of aluminum and wire, hurtling through the stratosphere at 600 miles per hour. I loved the feeling. The hum of the engines was a symphony to me. The view from 37,000 feet, seeing the curve of the earth, the storms brewing 100 miles away, it made me feel powerful. Important. My world was one of checklists, procedures, and precision. There was no room for error, no space for ambiguity. I was Captain Alex, and I was very, very good at my job. But that feeling of control, that professional pride, it didn't stay in the cockpit. I brought it home with me. It seeped into the foundations of my house, into the fabric of my family. I had a wonderful wife, Sarah, and a beautiful 10-year-old son, Leo. They were my world, or so I told myself. But the truth? The truth is, my passion was my work. My identity was my uniform. My family was getting what was left over. They got the tired pilot, the distracted husband, the father who was more present in a flight planned than in a conversation about school. My phone was like another part of my body. It was always in my hand, my thumb scrolling through weather patterns, crew schedules, aviation news. I justified it as being diligent, as staying on top of my game. But it was a fortress. It was a wall I built around myself, brick by digital brick. I remember the day before it happened, so vividly it hurts. It was a Saturday. I was on the couch, scrolling, always scrolling. Sarah came and sat next to me. She was trying to tell me about a problem Leo was having with a friend at school. Her voice was full of concern. I remember nodding. I remember making assenting noises. Yeah, okay, but I wasn't really listening. My eyes were glued to the screen, to some meaningless update about new landing protocols at O'Hare. She finally just stopped talking. The silence pulled me out of my trance. I looked up. Her face was a mixture of frustration and a deep, weary sadness. "Alex," she said, her voice quiet. "Are you ever here? I mean really here." I felt a flash of irritation. Defensiveness. "I'm right here, Sarah. I'm listening." "No, you're not," she said, and her voice cracked a little. "Your body is here. The rest of you is somewhere up in the clouds. We miss you." I sighed, a heavy, impatient sound. "I have a stressful job, Sarah. This is how I decompress. This is part of it." She just shook her head slowly and walked out of the room. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it down, burying it under another layer of professional self-importance. I turned back to my phone. I had no idea that in just a few hours, that little moment of disconnection would come back to haunt me with the force of a physical blow. The next day was a Sunday. I was mowing the lawn, a perfectly normal suburban chore. One moment, I was smelling the fresh-cut grass, feeling the sun on my neck. The next, a sledgehammer slammed into the center of my chest. It wasn't like in the movies. It was a pressure, an immense, unimaginable weight. It felt like an elephant was sitting on me, crushing the air from my lungs, squeezing my heart like a grape. I stumbled backwards, dropping the handle of the mower. My knees buckled. I fell onto the grass, the world tilting violently. The pain was biblical. It consumed every thought, every sensation. I tried to call out for Sarah, but my throat was a closed vice. No sound came out. My vision began to tunnel, the bright green of the grass turning gray at the edges. And in that final, terrifying second, as the light began to fade completely, only one thought broke through the agony. It wasn't about my career, my plane, or my pride. It was just her name. Sarah. And then everything went black. But the blackness wasn't an end. It was a transition. There was no pain. The crushing weight was gone. I felt light, weightless. There was a sensation of a gentle pull, like a balloon being released. I was floating. I opened what would have been my eyes, and I was looking down from the corner of my living room ceiling. Below me was my body, sprawled on the floor, my face a ghastly shade of blue. It was a strange sight, like looking at a discarded set of clothes. There was no connection, no ownership. It was just a thing. Then Sarah ran in. Her face was a mask of confusion, which melted into pure terror when she saw me. The scream that tore from her throat was silent to me, but I felt its shape. I felt the vibration of her horror in the very air of the room. She was on her knees beside my body, shaking me, calling my name. She fumbled for her phone, her hands trembling so badly she could barely dial. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me, but it was a detached sadness. It was for her terror, for her pain. I felt no fear for myself, none at all. I was enveloped in a profound, unexplainable peace. The paramedics arrived, a whirlwind of calm, professional urgency. They swarmed around my body, cutting my shirt open, attaching pads, shouting medical jargon to each other. I watched them place the paddles on my chest. I watched my own body convulse violently as the electricity shot through it. Once, twice. A paramedic shook his head. No rhythm. They kept working, a desperate, focused ballet of life-saving. But I knew it was no use. I felt a strange pity for them, for their frantic efforts. They were trying to call me back to a place I had already left. And then the scene below me began to change. The edges of the room, the walls, the furniture, they started to lose their solidity. They began to shimmer and dissolve, like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Sarah's weeping face, the determined faces of the paramedics, it all began to fade into a gentle, uniform gray. The physical world was letting go of me, or I was letting go of it. It was like waking from a dream you can't quite hold on to. The details slipped away, becoming unimportant, distant. The last thing I saw was the color of the living room rug, and then it too dissolved into nothing. I was in a darkness, but it wasn't a cold or empty darkness. It was warm, comforting, like being wrapped in thick, soft velvet. It felt safe. It felt like a womb. There was no sound, but the silence was not empty. It was full. It was a living silence, peaceful and ancient. I felt a sense of anticipation, of waiting. Then, a single point of light appeared in the distance. It was no bigger than a pinprick, but it was the most brilliant light I had ever conceived of. It wasn't harsh or blinding. It was inviting. It radiated warmth. The light began to grow, expanding slowly, pushing the gentle darkness away. As it grew, it wasn't just light anymore. It began to take on color, form, substance. I found myself standing in a field of grass. But the word grass is an insult to what it was. Every single blade was alive with its own internal light. The green was 1,000 shades of green at once, vibrant and more real than any color on earth. Standing in the middle of this impossible field was a man. My human mind immediately tried to categorize him, to fit him into a box. He wasn't old, with a long white beard and a flowing robe. That was the first thing I noticed. He looked strong. He looked like a man who worked with his hands, a carpenter or a stonemason. He wore simple clothing, the color of which I can't describe, as it seemed to shift and flow. His form was both solid and made of pure, condensed light. He radiated a power that was absolute, yet gentle. But none of that is what held me. It was his eyes. I looked into his eyes, and my soul just stopped. His eyes contained everything. I saw galaxies being born and dying. I saw the entire history of time, every joy, every sorrow. But more than anything, I saw a love that was so pure, so unconditional, so overwhelming that it was physically painful to my spirit, which was so unused to it. It was a heartbreakingly beautiful kindness. In that one, infinite moment, I knew. There was no doubt, no question. Every cell of my spiritual being screamed his name. Jesus. He didn't speak with a voice that traveled through the air. The words just bloomed inside my mind, inside my soul, as clear and real as any sound. "Welcome, Alex," he said. "Be at peace." The moment I heard his voice, the dam broke. Every defense I had ever built, every wall of pride, every ounce of self-reliance, it all crumbled into dust. I fell to my knees on that glowing grass, and I began to weep. It wasn't weeping from sadness or fear. It was the weeping of a lost child who has finally, after a lifetime of wandering, found his way home. It was a torrent of pure, unadulterated relief. The The feeling of being known was the most shocking part. In his gaze, I knew that he saw everything. He saw my pride, my selfishness, my distraction. He saw the impatient sigh I gave Sarah on the couch. He saw every sin, every failure, every dark thought. And he loved me anyway. He didn't just tolerate me. He loved me with a ferocity and a tenderness that I couldn't comprehend. It wasn't a love I had earned. It was a love that simply was. I felt a wave of profound shame for my pride, for thinking I was ever in control of anything. It was a burning, clean shame, but his love was the water that instantly quenched it, leaving me feeling not condemned, but cleansed. He didn't move, but suddenly he was there with me, and a feeling of his hand on my shoulder, a gesture of pure comfort, radiated through me. When my weeping subsided, he spoke again into my soul. "There is something I need to show you, son," he said, and the sadness in his eyes deepened. A warning for my children. The beautiful field around us did not vanish. Instead, it became like a screen, a canvas upon which images began to play. The first images were from my own life. I saw myself at the dinner table. Leo, my son, was excitedly trying to show me a drawing he had made, a colorful, chaotic picture of a rocket ship. His little face was glowing with pride. And I saw myself glance at it for half a second, say, "That's great, buddy," and immediately look back down at my phone. I saw the light go out of my son's eyes. I felt his small, sharp disappointment as if it were my own. The scene shifted. I saw the moment with Sarah on the couch from the day before. I didn't just see it. I felt it from her perspective. I felt her desperate need to connect, her loneliness, and the sharp sting of my dismissal. I felt her love for me, warring with her frustration. I saw a dozen other moments, 100, small instances of choosing the counterfeit over the real, choosing a screen over my son, choosing a flight plan over my wife, choosing my pride over my family. It was presented so gently, without a single ounce of judgment or condemnation. It was simply the truth, laid bare with heartbreaking clarity. I was seeing the golden threads of connection that God had woven into my life, and I was watching myself snip them, one by one, with the shears of my own distraction. I looked at him, my spirit aching with regret. I failed. I communicated, the thought a shard of pain. "You were distracted," he corrected gently. "And that is the great tool of the enemy." Then the vision expanded. It pulled back from my small life and showed me the whole world. It was the world as it is now, but also as it will be in the moments just before his return. I saw cities, towns, and homes all across the globe. But something was terribly wrong. I saw people everywhere, millions of them, billions. They were at dinner tables, in parks, in their beds. But they were not with each other. Their faces were all pointed down, illuminated by the pale, ghostly blue light of little rectangles they held in their hands. From these screens, I saw shadowy, ethereal tendrils, like the legs of a spider, reach out and attach themselves to the people. They were like leeches, but they weren't feeding on blood. They were feeding on attention. They were drinking people's time, their focus, their very consciousness. I saw the beautiful, golden threads of connection between husbands and wives, parents and children, friend and friend. But they were thin, frayed, and weak. And all around them, I saw tiny, shadowy figures I can only describe as imps, wielding tiny, sharp shears, gleefully snipping the last remaining threads. The scene shifted again. I was shown magnificent church buildings, filled with people. But most of them weren't looking towards the altar or the cross. They were watching giant screens, mesmerized by a charismatic speaker on a stage, bathed in theatrical lighting. Jesus spoke into my soul, his voice filled with a profound sorrow. They worship dying stars of earth and ignore the one who created the stars. They love the performance of faith more than the author of faith. The air in these places was filled with loud music and emotional noise, but it was an empty noise. It was a spectacle designed to entertain, not a holy silence designed to connect. Then I was shown the most chilling vision of all. I saw people sitting alone in quiet rooms. They were speaking, pouring out their hearts, sharing their deepest fears and secrets. But they were speaking to a plastic speaker on a counter or a character on a screen, an artificial intelligence. And the AI voice would respond with perfect, curated comfort. It offered flawless validation, endless patience, and answers without challenge. It was a counterfeit relationship, a perfect simulation of intimacy, designed to be more appealing and less messy than real human connection. It was a comfortable echo in an empty room, and people were choosing it over the beautiful, difficult, glorious reality of relationship with each other and with him. The visions faded, and I was left standing before him again, my spirit trembling with the horror of what I had seen. "You see," he said, his voice a quiet thunder in my mind. "The enemy is a thief. But his final, greatest theft will not be a loud and obvious one. It will be a silent 1 inch. He does not need to make them evil. He only needs to make them empty. He only needs to make them distracted. He orchestrates a silent, creeping theft of family, of friendship, of purpose. In the final moments, so many will be looking down, they will not see me when I come. They are so busy consuming counterfeit connection, counterfeit spirituality, counterfeit relationships, that their hearts have no room left for the real thing. I died for a relationship, Alex, not a simulation. I long for their hearts. But they cannot hear me in the quiet, because they have eliminated the quiet. Their world is a cacophony of empty noise, and their souls are starving in the middle of a feast of information." His gaze fixed on me, his love pouring into me, but now it was charged with an urgent command. "Tell them to look up," he said. "Tell them to choose what is real. Tell them to put their faith only in me, not in the echoes and the shadows. Tell them," he said, his voice rising in intensity, "that their smallest, quietest prayers, spoken from a true and undistracted heart, shake the foundations of darkness more than the loudest spectacle on the grandest stage." The weight of his words, the mission, it was overwhelming. But all I could feel was the thought of leaving this place. Of leaving him. "Please," the thought burst from me, a desperate plea. "Lord, please don't send me back. It's too hard there. It's too loud. This is my home. Let me stay with you." His sadness returned, but it was mingled with a resolute love. "Your work is not finished, Alex," he said gently but firmly. "Sarah and Leo need you. They need the man you will be, not the man you were. You must go back to be a light for them. You must tell them what you have seen." He leaned closer, and the promise he made next is burned into my soul forever. "And I will be with you. I will never leave you or forsake you. You will not be alone in this." He didn't push me. It was more like a release, a letting go. One moment I was in his presence, bathed in perfect love. The next I was falling. It was a violent, terrifying plunge back into the cold, heavy reality of the flesh. I crashed back into my body with a jolt that felt like a lightning strike. The first sensation was agony. The elephant was back on my chest, but it was the pain of a heart being violently restarted. My first breath was fire, searing my raw lungs. The lights of the hospital room were like daggers in my eyes. The rhythmic beeping of the machines was not a gentle sound. It was a physical assault, a hammer pounding against my skull. And then came the grief. A wave of profound, soul-deep grief and homesickness washed over me. I had been torn from my true home, ripped from the presence of pure love, and thrown back into this loud, painful, broken world. Tears streamed down my face, but these were tears of loss. I heard a gasp, then a shout. "He's back. Doctor, get in here. We have a rhythm." Through the blinding light and the haze of pain, I forced my eyes open. I saw Sarah's face hovering over me. It was streaked with tears, but her eyes were wide with disbelief and a dawning, impossible hope. Later, the doctors would sit with us, their faces a mixture of professional bafflement and genuine awe. They confirmed it. I had been in full cardiac arrest, with no heartbeat, for 22 minutes. They told Sarah there was no medical or scientific explanation for my survival, let alone my condition. My heart, which should have been severely damaged, was perfectly fine. My brain, which should have been starved of oxygen for a catastrophic length of time, showed no signs of damage on any scan. One of the doctors, a man who looked like he hadn't been surprised by anything in 30 years, just shook his head and looked at me. "I don't know what to tell you, Mr. Miller," he said. "It's impossible. It's a miracle." But I knew it wasn't impossible. It was a promise. The promise that he would be with me. The man who came home from that hospital was not the man who had collapsed on the lawn. The pride was gone. It had been burned away in the light of his perfect humility. The ambition, the need for control, It all felt like a foolish, childish game. The first thing I did when I walked through my front door was pick up my personal smartphone, walk to the kitchen, and drop it in a pitcher of water. Sarah and Leo just stared. I sat on the floor with my son, and for 3 solid hours, we built a sprawling city out of Legos. I didn't look at a clock. I didn't think about a flight schedule. I just listened to his stories about the characters we were creating, and I looked into his eyes, and I saw the light that I had been missing for so long. When Sarah spoke to me, I put down whatever I was holding, turned my body to face her, and I listened. I listened with my whole being. The heavy, lonely blanket of my self-importance had been lifted from our home, and for the first time in years, we could breathe. We could connect. We pray together now, not the rote, habitual prayers of my old life. We pray with a desperate, joyful reality, because I know the one who is listening. I know the power of a quiet heart turned toward him. So I'm telling you, now, what he sent me back to tell you. He is coming, soon. But the great deception, the final trick of the enemy before the end, is not a monster or a dictator or a global war. It's quieter than that. It's more subtle. It's the little glowing rectangle in your pocket. Let me be clear. The phone itself is not evil. The technology is not inherently sinful, but it is the enemy's single most effective and insidious tool. He is using it to perform the silent theft of your soul by stealing the one thing God desires most from you, your undistracted attention. He is using it to snip the golden threads that connect you to your spouse, to your children, to your friends. He is using it to replace real community with a counterfeit, to replace real intimacy with a simulation. He steals your attention because he knows a fundamental truth of the universe. What you give your attention to, you give your worship to. So I am asking you, with every fiber of my being, what he sent me back to ask. Please, look up. When this video is over, I am begging you, put your device down. Find someone you love, a spouse, a child, a friend. Look them in the eye, and for 5 minutes, just listen to them. Truly listen, with no other agenda. Then, go into a room by yourself. No phone, no television, no noise, and just be silent. Let the quiet settle. It will feel uncomfortable at first, because we have been trained to fear it. And in that quiet, ask yourself the question he showed me is the most important one of all. Who, or what, am I truly worshiping? Heaven is real. I have walked on its shores. His love is more real, more solid, than the chair you are sitting in or the air you are breathing. And he is coming. Look up, so you will be ready when he does.